திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். புழியர்கோன் வெப்பொழித்த புகழியர்கோன் கடல் போற்றி. ஆழிமிசை கல்மிதப்பில் அணைந்த பிரான் அடி போற்றி. வாழி திரு நாவலூர் வன்றொண்டர் பதம் போற்றி. ஊழிமலி திருவாத ஊரர் திருத்தாள் போற்றி. திருச்சிற்றம்பலம். So today we are continuing our discussion on padhigam 7.39. We are going to start from verse number 10. So Chakravarti, you can repeat with me. பத்தராய் பணிவார்கள்,
பத்தராய் பணிவார்கள்,
எல்லார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
எல்லார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
பரமனையே பாடுவார்,
பரமனையே பாடுவார்,
அடியார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
அடியார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
சித்தத்தைச் சிவன்பாலே,
சித்தச்சை சிவன்பாலே,
வைத்தார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
வைத்தார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
திருவாரூர் பிறந்தார்கள்,
திருவாரூர் பிறந்தார்கள், பிறந்தார்கள்,
எல்லார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
எல்லார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
முப்போதும் திருமேனி,
முப்போதும் திருமேனி,
தீண்டுவார்க்கு அடியேன்,
தீண்டுவார்க்கு அடியேன்,
முழுநீறு பூசிய,
முழுநீறு பூசிய,
முனிவர்க்கும் அடியேன்,
முனிவர்க்கும் அடியேன்,
அப்பாலும் அடிச்சார்ந்தார்,
அப்பாலும் அடிச்சார்ந்தார்,
அடியார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
அடியார்க்கும் அடியேன்,
ஆரூரன் ஆரூரில்,
ஆரூரன் ஆரூரில்,
அம்மானுக்கு ஆளே,
அம்மானுக்கு ஆளே.
Good. So in this 10th verse, Sundaramurti nAyanAr is listing a lot of devotees. Each line refers to one devotee, and here he is describing groups of devotees or classes of devotees. If you recall, we had said that tiruttoṇḍattogai, he lists many devotees by name, and he also describes some groups of devotees or classes of devotees. And so in addition to listing them, he lists 60 devotee names. Then he lists 9 categories of devotees, and then he mentions his father's name, his mother's name, and his name. So the 60 named devotees, then Sundarar's parents and Sundarar. So that 60 plus 3 becomes 63 nAyanars. That is the tradition. And the other 9 groups of devotees, they are called thogai adiyar, basically groups of devotees. And we saw in the very first verse, tillai-vāḻ andaṇardam adiyarkum adiyen. That is the first group of devotees, which is the Chidambaram priests. And here in the 10th verse, he is listing a bunch of devotees who are groups of devotees. There is no individual devotee named here. They are all classes. So, Pattarai Panivargal Ellarkum Adiyen. Pattar means Bhakta. So, he says, I am a servant of all those who worship Shiva as devotees. That's the meaning of that first line. So I am servant of all the bhaktas. So that's what he says. And now we have to think about who is a bhakta. We have Periya Puranam lists all the devotees' life histories. Every devotee has served Shiva and shown his devotion in different ways. So somebody, many of them have done whatever their profession was, and through that they were serving the Lord. Whether he was a potter, whether he was a merchant, or whether he was a farmer, whether he was a what you can call a warrior, whatever it may be. So they were all showing their devotion in their own ways. So if you look at the nayanmar devotees whose stories we have been seeing, we already see how many types of devotions can be there, and how one can express one's devotion to the Lord. So whether one does annadanam or whether one does manual service in the temple, it can be anything. So that's what he's saying. Anybody who serves the Lord as a devotee, I am their servant. And who is a bhakta? There are various definitions, right? There in Sanskritam we have things like Narada Bhakti Sutram, which tries to describe, how devotions are, what are the ways of showing devotions. And there are people who will have other things which will refer to Navavida Bhakti. So there are different classifications and descriptions of how one does devotion, how one shows devotion. And we have seen in some of the songs, we have seen a Tiruppugal song. If you remember, we have seen that Unai-Nam-Tozhilan. Some of you, I think all of you were there when we discussed the Tiruppugal song. In that, Arunagirinathar is saying, what are the ways in which he is not showing his devotion. I don't worship you daily, I don't talk about your qualities, I don't throw flower on your feet, and I don't do any tapas, I don't even know where your devotees are, and I don't do girivalam and all that stuff. So he's giving a lot of lists, so what a devotee should do. And similarly, we have seen in Thiruvambavai, in the third song, we have seen Thiruvambavai a couple of years ago, I think. And in that, there is a third song which is Muttanna Vennagayai, Mun Vandu Ezhuzhuzhan Attan Anandan and Alluri. And all that is describing how a devotee should behave. And then in that there is a statement. Pattudaiyir Isan Pazhagadiyir. Oh, you are all old devotees, you are all already devotees of Shiva, you have been a long time devotees of Shiva. And you have Pattudaiyir. Pattu means 10, or it can mean bhakti, but it also literally means 10. So he says you have the 10 qualities. And then in the notes they explain, that there are 10 qualities of a devotee, and then they classify it further. There are 10 external qualities and then 10 internal qualities. And then basically, about external qualities are like, wearing Rudraksham, Vibhuti, and, then uttering the names of Shiva and doing puja and listening to Shiva's stories and so on and so forth. So there's a list of 10. And similarly, the internal qualities are what happens when one experiences bhakti, whether it is eyes tear up when you are in deep devotion, or you have this hair standing on roots, like romancham. So all those kind of things. So there are internal experience and external qualities. So they describe all those things, and in fact, Thirunāvukkaraśar in another padhigam he says, Pattu kolam adiyar seigaidane. That the adiyar's action, bhakta's actions are 10. So he says all that. So there are different descriptions of what is devotion and how one expresses devotion and what happens when one experiences devotion. So Sundarar here simply says, I am a servant of all those devotees. So all true devotees, I am their servant. So that is the first class he is describing in this song. And then the next one he says, Paramanaye Paduvar Adiyarkum Adiyen. Right? Paramanaye Paduvar. And that means Parama is Lord, Paraman, and Padudal means to sing. So what he is saying is that Paramanaye Paduvarkum Adiyen. Paduvar Adiyarkum Adiyen. Those who sing only Shiva's glory, I am their servant. So this refers to people who sing Shiva, bhakti songs, right? Those who are singing bhakti songs in any language, doesn't mean that it has to be in Tamil or it has to be in Sanskrit. It can be in any language. The devotional songs that are, people who sing expressing their devotion in songs in various languages. And here, there's a very important thing that he says, the Paramanai Paduvar means those who sing Lord's glory, or those who are singing about the Parama. And then Paramanaye Paduvar, that ye means emphasis. It qualifies that thing which says those who sing only about Parama. Those who sing only songs on Shiva. That is the Lord. So, if somebody sings 10 songs and there are 3 songs which are devotional songs and 7 songs which are, light music and film songs and all that, right? Then they are not in this category. So those who are dedicated to singing only Lord's glory. To those singers, I am their servant. Then the next one is Chittattai Chivanpale Vaittarkam Adiyen. Chittam is a Sanskritam word, we know that. It's basically mind. Those who have established their mind on Shiva. Shivan Pale. Pal here means not the milk, but here Pal means on Shiva. So those who have focused their mind on Shiva. Vaitar means to keep. Those who have kept their mind firmly on Shiva, I am their servant. What does it mean? Chittate Sivanbale Vaitar. So this is referring to the Shiva yogis. The Yoga Sastram, it refers to the Ashtanga Yogam, right? Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dharana, then Dhyanam, Samadhi, right? So he is referring to people who are following that yogic path and who are in that higher stages of that 8 steps. Those who have firmly established their mind on Shiva. That kind of yogis who are meditating on Shiva, I am their servant. Then comes the next line which says, Thiruvarur Pirandargal Ellarkum Adiyen. I am a servant of all those who are born in Thiruvarur. It doesn't even say that they are, the previous ones are saying, I am a servant of all the devotees, true devotees. I am the servant of all those who sing only about the Lord. I am the servant of all those yogis who are established their mind in Shiva. After that he says, I am a servant of all those who are born in Thiruvarur. Seems, anybody can be born in Thiruvarur. There are all kinds of people, right? So you have great devotees, you have ordinary people, people who are higher scholars, people who are illiterate. So you have all kinds of people in the Thiruvarur. But he says, I am a servant of all those who are born in Thiruvarur. How do we understand this? That's why we have to remember the Naminenji Adigal story. Remember the story of Naminenji Adigal, who was living in a place called Emapperur near Thiruvarur, and who was, one day when he was worshipping Shiva in Thiruvarur, he wanted to light lamps and it was getting close to dark. He couldn't have time to go home and get oil. So he asked the people living nearby to borrow some oil. And the people who were living nearby the temple, they were all Jains at that time. And they were all mocking him, hey, your God is so great. He's already holding a fire in his hand. Why does he need a lamp? And if you want to light a lamp, he is powerful. Why don't you take the water and light the lamp? Why do you need oil? So they were mocking him. So Naminenji Adigal was so upset that he went back to the temple and he fell at the feet of Shiva and said, cried. And then Ashariri said, oh Naminenji, go bring water from the temple tank and pour into the lamps. So Naminenji Adigal, he took a pitcher, went to the temple tank, brought water, filled up all the lamps, and the lamps were burning brightly all through the night. just with water. So like that he used to do it as a service. When he pours the water into the lamps will burn. That was his great devotion. So that devotee, one day, as annual festival, the Utsavamurti of Thiruvarur temple came to a nearby village, and he went to that place where he was participating in the Utsavam. So when the Swami comes on the Vidhi Ula, when they comes to outside, everybody will be there. There is no caste difference, there is no purity difference. You are Brahmana, you are Kshatriya, you are you are bathed, you have not bathed. There is no such thing because there is a crowd on the street. Everybody is there. So Naminandi was mingled with them, and then in the evening he comes home. It was probably late evening, or already sunset had occurred, so he comes home, and he was resting in the veranda outside the house, and he feels tired and he falls a little bit asleep, and then his wife comes out and wakes him up and says, oh, why haven't you come inside? You have to do your evening prayers. And he says, hey, I have been to this festival and I mingled with everybody, so I am not pure now. I need to have a bath, and only then I can do my evening puja, so prepare hot water. So she goes inside to prepare hot water, and he's sitting there, and again he falls asleep. And then in his dream, Shiva comes and says, hey Naminandi, what do you think? All the people in Thiruvarur are all my Shiva Ganas. Tomorrow I will show you to them. I will show them to you. So he wakes up and he feels so wonderful, right? He's so amazed that Shiva came in his dream and talked about this. So next day morning, he hurriedly goes to Thiruvarur, and with Shiva's grace, he saw everybody in Thiruvarur as in the form of Shiva Ganas. And that scene remains for some time, and then Shiva makes it disappear, and then they all look like normal people again. Again, I am mentioning this story of Naminandi Adigal to understand the context of what Sundarar is saying here. Thiruvarur Pirandargal ellarkum adiyen. I am a servant of everyone who was born in Thiruvarur. That means people who are born in Thiruvarur, they are all punyatmas. They are all good people. They have done a lot of good karma in the past. That's why they are born in Thiruvarur. They are born in Thiruvarur so that they could worship the Swami of Thiruvarur. So that is the kind of a special punyam that they have done. Because of that, they are all great. And that's how he's saying, I am a servant of all the people who are born in Thiruvarur. Then the next one is Muppodum Thirumeni Thirunduvarkku Adiyen. Muppodu means 3 times. Podu means time. Muppodu means 3 times. Thirumeni is the holy form. The vigrahas that we have in this temple, the Garbhagraham, the Shivalingam, and all those murtams. So they are all called holy forms, and the people who touch those holy forms, Thirundadal means to touch. So those who touch and worship 3 times a day, I am their servant. Means all the priests in all the temples who are worshipping the Lord and doing puja in the temple, I am a servant of all of them. So basically he's highlighting that they are all great people, that they have done punyam to be born as priests who are worshipping the Lord every day 3 times. And also by doing this, they have studied the agamas, they have studied the Vedas, and they are doing the puja, Atmavata puja as well as Paravata puja. They are doing all those pujas. So he's describing that I am a servant of them. By the way, Sundarar, if you remember, is the son of a temple priest. We will see his story later, but we have seen in the Pita Parisudi's padhigam background, Sundarar was born as a son of a temple priest in a place called thirunIlakaNta. So he's described, he knows, because he's of that heritage, so he knows their qualifications, he knows their devotion and all that. So that's why he's describing that. Then the next one is Muzhuniru Pusiya Munivarkkum Adiyen. Muni is Rishi, those kind of sages, Munivar. Niru is holy ash. Muzhu means fully. Pusiya means to wear or to smear. So the sages and the rishis and all those great people who apply holy ash all over their body and worship Shiva. So that is basically, I am a servant of all the great tapasvis. And then he says, Appalum adicharndar adiyarkkum adiyen. This is a very important and unique phrase. Appal means beyond. Okay? When you say beyond, Appalum, beyond, adicharndar. Adi is holy feet, padam. Sarndar means those who have reached or those who are focused on, those who are worshipping. Adiyarkkum adiyen. So I am a devotee of all the devotees who have worshipped, who worship Shiva's feet, who have reached Shiva's feet as their refuge, and those who are beyond. So the beyond is a key phrase here, because he is describing various kinds of devotees in this padhigam. But then this is not a comprehensive list, right? This is if anything, this is a representative list, right? How many devotees are there? Thousands and thousands of devotees are there, even if you want to name them, right? And then there are devotees who are within the region that you are familiar with, the southern India, and there are devotees beyond the southern region of India, right? There are people in the east, north, west, all over the world, right? So there are devotees all over the world, but he knows only some of them. He has listed only some of them in this padhigam. And then the devotees can be there before his time, during his time, and after his time. So by time and space, there are devotees who are beyond this list. So people who are devotees who lived long ago, we don't even know them, right? There were, if there was a sage who was doing tapas in some village or some forest 2000 years ago, we won't know. Just as they say, there are how many yogis are there? In Tiruvannamalai, there are a lot of yogis. Himalayas, there are a lot of yogis. So we don't even know their names, because they have been there a long time ago, they are now, and there will be more yogis, more devotees who will come later. So he is listing here all the devotees who are beyond in space and time. That means devotees who lived in the past, devotees who live in the present, devotees who are going to come in the future. I am worshipping them. Devotees who have lived, who are from this local region, southern India, or devotees who have been in other parts of the world, I worship them. Even though I can't name them, but I worship them. That's how he is describing that. That is the Appalam adicharndar. Then he says, Aruran Aruril Ammanukale. I, Aruran, that is Sundarar, Aruril Ammanuk, the Lord of Thiruvarur, to him all, means I am a slave. I am a slave. This Sundaran, this Aruran is a slave of the Swami of Thiruvarur. That is the gist of the 10th song. Any thoughts, comments? We can talk now. If you are on mute, you can unmute and say or ask.
Yeah. Here I have, basically when you say the first bhakta, correct? I am so there, the subsequent group of people also are basically a subset of these bhaktas in a way. People who are only singing praises of the praises of God, okay, and singing praises of God itself is a part of bhakta.
Correct.
So like, is there any significance there? Because as I see it, they are subsets of the first set.
Yeah, agreed. So that's a good question. And if anything, everybody who is listed in all the songs of Tiruttoṇḍattogai, right? They are all bhaktas.
Correct.
So that is a sort of a comprehensive category, right? But he also puts subcategories. So we don't know why he put it that way, but you can say it as in programming. Since many of us will know programming either in college or otherwise. If this, else this. Like that. So you can look at it as the Bhattarai Panivarul is like the else condition. You can take it at the end. I have listed all these names and I have listed all these categories, and beyond this, there will be other devotees. To them, I am also a servant. You can take it that way too.
Okay.
Does it help?
Yeah.
Good. So now we are ready to go to the 11th verse. So Madhuri, you want to repeat with me?
Sure.
Manniyasir Marainavan Nindravur Pusal Varivalayal Manikkum Nesanukkum Adiyen Tennavanai Ulagu Anda Senganarkku Adiyen thirunIlakaNta Pāṇanārkku Adiyen Ennavanam Aranadiye Adainditta Sadayan isaignAni Kādalan thirunāvalurkon Annavanam Āruran Adimai kettu Uvappar Āruril Ammanukku Anbar Avare. So this is the final song of Tiruttoṇḍattogai. Sundarar padhigams usually have 10 songs, but some padhigams have more songs, and this is one of those padhigams where he has got 11 songs. So in this final song of Sundarar padhigams, it's like a Palasruti kind of thing. He will list the town and the Salam and the Swami on whom he has sung this padhigam. He will list his name, that I, Sundarar, who has sung this padhigam, and then he will list the benefit the devotee will get who recites this padhigam or who sings this padhigam. So that is there in this padhigam. And before that, in this padhigam, he is also listing, in this song, he is also listing several named devotees. So in the previous 10th verse, he has described categories of devotees, but in the 11th one, he is adding some more specific names. So Manniyasir Marainavan Nindravur Pusal, that is one devotee. pUsalAr is one devotee. Varivalayal Mani is another devotee. Nesan is another devotee. Tennavanai Ulagu Anda Senganan is another devotee. thirunIlakaNta Pāṇanārkku, that is 5 named devotees is listing here, and then he is listing his parents' name. Sadayan is his father's name. Isaignani is his mother's name. He is listing his father and mother, and then he is saying their son, myself. So he is listing his parents' name and he lists his name, and he says Adimai kettu Uvappar, those who listen to this padhigam, they will become devotees of Thiruvarur Swami. Aruril Ammanukku Anbar avaru. Anbar is Bhakta. So the summary of this padhigam is that those who listen to this padhigam and recite this padhigam, they will become Bhaktas of Thiruvarur Swami. That's the benefit is list. Now we will look at some of the named devotees and their stories. Manniyasir Marainavan Nindravur Pusal. So Pusal is the name of a devotee. We commonly will refer to him as pUsalAr. The R suffix in Tamil means it's a respect, indicating respect. So pUsalAr. And the pUsalAr lived in a town called Nindravur. thirunIlakaNta is a town where he lived. And he was a Brahmana. That's why he's called the Marainavan. Marai is Veda. Navan is Na is tongue. So who chants Vedas with his tongue? That's the Marainavan. And he has got long-standing fame, enduring fame. Manniyasir. Mannudal means to endure, to be permanent. That is Manniya. Sir is fame, greatness. So pUsalAr, who is a Brahmana of enduring fame, long-standing fame, permanent fame, who hails from the town Nindravur, I am his devotee. Now, this is a very wonderful story. thirunIlakaNta is a suburb of Chennai. So if you go from Chennai, if you go west from Chennai towards a place called Thiruvallur, you will come across this place called thirunIlakaNta. So, you can say it's probably about 30 kilometers or 35 kilometers from Chennai. And thirunIlakaNta, in those days, a Brahmana lived there called the pUsalAr. And he was a great Bhakta. That goes without saying, right? Anybody who is listed in this tiruttoṇḍattogai is a great Bhakta, great devotee. And he wanted to build a temple for Shiva. So, everybody has this desire, wants to do some service to Shiva, and the people, in his case, he had this desire to build a Shiva temple in his village. So, and building a temple, it's a big project. Those who have seen, even modern temples, right? If you are living in America or Europe and you want to build a temple in your town, you know how big project it is, right? What a big project it is. Right? You need a lot of fund. You need land. You need material, resources, people. And it's a multi-year project. It'll take you, even in today's times, it'll take 3-4 years before a temple can be built. Even if the money and material and the people are there. So pUsalAr wanted to build a temple, and he was a Brahmana, so he didn't have much money, and so he tried to raise funds. He tried to talk to different people, those who have merchants and landowners and all that, right? The richer segment of the society, he tried to reach out to them, and he sought donations and funds to build a temple, and probably people were not willing to give funds to him. Either they were not interested in building a temple, or they didn't want to give away money, or maybe they didn't believe that this person could build a temple. Whatever reason, he could not raise any money for the temple. So what to do? Now he can't raise money. He has asked all the people who can help, and nobody is helping. Now he says, he thought, hey, I wanted to build a temple for Shiva, but I'm not able to get funds to build such temple. What to do? He says, okay. Now, even if I can't build a physical temple, let me build a temple for Shiva in my mind. And he was a great devotee, and he decided one day he chose the auspicious time. He sat down in some place in his house or maybe under a tree or whatever, and he goes into mentally, he is imagining, right? He focused his mind on building the temple project, and he says, he mentally started the project, getting the funds, finding a good location for the temple, because temple location has to be established based on the land location and the soil quality, and a lot of other things are there, and where to build a temple. So, and it takes time, and so in his mind, mentally imagined that hey, he was going to get a person who is going to go locate the land, identify the qualities of the land, and then decided an auspicious day for the Bhumi Puja, where he has to start the first puja, and then building the foundation, and then planning the temple and getting the material, and bringing the various kind of whether it is carpentry, whether it is what we call as a cultacher, which means the masons who carve out the pillars from the rock and all that, right? So all kinds of things. So he was doing this in a slow and steady manner, as if he was building a real temple. If a real temple, let's say, it takes 3 years to build, I'm just giving it as a hypothetical example. He 3 years. Every day he will spend 4 hours, 5 hours sitting in meditation, building the temple in his mind. So today, let's say he has spent 3 months and laid the foundation, and then tomorrow he will come and start the first level of the wall raising, as an example, right? So, if there's a sculptor who is going to sculpt the Shiva Lingam and who is going to sculpt the Uma sculpture and all that, right? Vigrahams. So, if they take 1 year to sculpt the Vigraham, he will spend 1 year mentally. Every day he will do it, and come back next day and continue from where he stopped in the previous day. It's an incredible thing, and he, over a number of years, he builds this mental temple. And one day, the temple is all finished. All the structures have been raised, and all the vigrahams have been brought in and installed, and everything is ready. Now, we have to do Prana Pratishtha and Kumbhabhishekam. So he checks his Panchangam, and he decides that the auspicious day for Kumbhabhishekam. He identifies the date, and he sets that schedules Kumbhabhishekam for that date, and mentally he is inviting all the people and announcing to everybody, hey, the Kumbhabhishekam is on this day, like a real temple Kumbhabhishekam. But it's all happening only in his mind. And it so happens, during the time, the Pallava king in Kanchipuram was building a famous temple. We believe that it is a Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram. Okay, so the king is building a Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram, and those of you who have been to Kanchipuram, you would have seen the Kailasanatha temple. If not, next time you go, you should go and see the Kailasanatha temple. It's a wonderful temple, big temple, wonderful temple. It's very, it's under archaeology department's control. It's a very nice temple. So he builds a temple, and then he sets schedule Kumbhabhishekam for the temple. So next day is going to be the Kumbhabhishekam day. The king is sleeping the previous night, and in his Pallava king's dream, Shiva appears. He tells the king, hey king, I know that you have scheduled Kumbhabhishekam tomorrow, but I have a conflict. I have to go to another Kumbhabhishekam in another place. In thirunIlakaNta, pUsalAr has built a temple, and tomorrow that Kumbhabhishekam is happening. So I have to go to that Kumbhabhishekam. So you postpone your Kumbhabhishekam. So Shiva mentions this in the king's dream and then goes away. So the king wakes up and he is surprised that Shiva came in his dream and gave this message. So he tells his people, postpone the Kumbhabhishekam, reschedule it, and then he gets on his horse and he wanted to go to thirunIlakaNta Kumbhabhishekam, because if Shiva came and told him that he is going to be in the thirunIlakaNta Kumbhabhishekam, then it has to be a great temple. He wanted to go to the temple and be part of that Kumbhabhishekam and worship Shiva there, and also worship the the person who has built that temple, fall at his feet and all that. So king comes to thirunIlakaNta. From Kanchipuram, this could be like 30-40 kilometers. So he would have probably traveled a few hours on his horse, and he would have come there. And as soon as the king reached the thirunIlakaNta area, town, he calls the local folks and says, where's the temple that has Kumbhabhishekam today? And the people say, what temple? There is no new temple here. There is no temple in our town. But the king is perplexed now. Shiva came in his dream and told him that there is a temple in thirunIlakaNta that is having Kumbhabhishekam today, and pUsalAr's temple, and he is going there. So then he says, who among you is pUsalAr? And the Brahmana say, sir, pUsalAr is not here, but he is a Brahmana in our town. Please wait, I will go and get him. And the king says, no, I will go and see him. So they take him to the place where pUsalAr lives. So the king arrives, and then the pUsalAr welcomes him, and the king says, I heard that, where is the temple that you have built? Swami told me in my dream that today is your temple's Kumbhabhishekam. I want to see the temple. Then pUsalAr, you can imagine pUsalAr's mind. This is Swami's expression. That Swami says, hey, I have accepted your temple, I am going to come and dwell in your temple. And not only that, Swami has treated it such a great temple that he has gone and informed the king about that. And so pUsalAr then explains what happened. The fact that he wanted to build a temple and he couldn't find funds for it, so he built the temple in his own mind over many years, and that day was his temple's Kumbhabhishekam. You can imagine the king's mind now. If a devotee can build a temple in his mind, the king may have thought that hey, he is a king and he has built this great grand temple in Kanchipuram. But Shiva has indicated to the king that his temple is great, but there is a even greater temple in thirunIlakaNta. And king understands how great the devotee is. So he falls at his feet, worships him, and then he returns to Kanchipuram. And pUsalAr conducts Kumbhabhishekam in his mental temple, and then from that day onwards he was worshipping Shiva in his temple in his mind till his final day on earth. So that is the story of thirunIlakaNta pUsalAr. So if you go to the thirunIlakaNta today, there is a temple in the town called Hridayalīsvara temple. You can say Hridayam Alayam. You can understand it. So it's a Hridayalīsvara temple in thirunIlakaNta. That temple was built at a later time by others in memory of pUsalAr and his mental temple. So that is the story of pUsalAr. Any thoughts, comments you want to say? You can unmute and say. If not, we'll go to the next devotee. Varivalayal Mani. Mani is the name. She was the Pandya queen. She is the one who brought Thiruñāna Sambandar to Madurai and brought back the Jain king into Saivam again and established Saivam in Pandya kingdom. She is popularly known as mangaiyarkkarasi. Mangaiyarkkarasi means she is like the gem among women kind of thing. But Mani is her name. Vari Valayal. Valai is bangle. Vari is lines. So Mani who wears bangles with lines. Basically, it's an adjective phrase that she is that Mani is the queen of Madurai. Now mangaiyarkkarasi, she is so special. She is the daughter of a Chola king and married to the Pandya king. So the Pandya king who was known as Kun Pandyan, he had a battle with the Chola king and he won the battle, and then the Chola king gave his daughter in marriage to the Pandya king to establish friendship and all that. So she is the Chola king's daughter and the Pandya king's wife, and the Pandya king had become a Jain, and not only he had become Jain, the whole palace was full of Jains, the whole town was full of Jains. The Pandya kingdom has gone away from Saivam and they all had become Jains. So Jains in those days, they had this discrimination against Saivas. So they will say, they hear the Shiva Namam, they consider it as unclean thing, they lose their purity. Or if they see somebody wearing holy ash, they call it impurity, that they have become unclean because they have seen a Shiva devotee. So banning, so Shiva's name cannot be uttered, holy ash cannot be worn on the forehead or on the body, you cannot wear Rudraksham, so all that is banned. And that is the situation in which she was living in, but she was an ardent Shiva devotee. She under the Pandya king, minister, Kulacharai, they both were ardent Shiva devotees. So mangaiyarkkarasi was a devoted wife, and she ensured that she didn't create any difficulty for her husband, but at the same time she did not give up her belief. So Sambandar sings one padhigam. When Sambandar comes to Madurai, as soon as he enters Madurai, he sings one padhigam, 3.120, in which he sings 11 songs, all the odd numbered songs, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. He sings praises of mangaiyarkkarasi's greatness. In even number songs, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10, he sings the greatness of Kulacharai, the minister. And in the 11th song, he praises both of them. So mangaiyarkkarasi is such a great devotee and such a great bhakta that Thiruñāna Sambandar praises her in his padhigam. So that shows how great she was. And then later, when we have seen this in the Thiruñāna Sambandar story, when the Pandya king falls with very high fever and nobody is able to cure him, and then she tells him, mangaiyarkkarasi is the one who tells the king, "O king, maybe if Sambandar comes, your fever will be cured, because the fever has come as a effect of all the bad things that these Jains were trying to do to him. Maybe if he comes and forgives this thing, maybe your fever will be cured." And so he says, okay, if he is willing to come, please bring him. So mangaiyarkkarasi is the one again who goes to Thiruñāna Sambandar and invites him to the palace. So he comes and he is surrounded by the Jains in the place, right? They all start shouting at him, asking him to come and debate their philosophy. And mangaiyarkkarasi is very much worried. This young child, maybe 7 or 8 or 10 years old at the time, and these are all this 30-40 Jains surrounding him, stout big guys, in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and with big bodies, and she's worried what will happen to this poor child. Maybe they will hurt him. Sambandar can feel what mangaiyarkkarasi was thinking. And he sings on padhigam 3.39, addressing mangaiyarkkarasi. You know, Thirunjana Sambandar never addresses anybody, right? He always addresses Shiva. But here, in this padhigam 3.39, he is addressing mangaiyarkkarasi and comforting her. Oh mangaiyarkkarasi, don't worry, Shiva is with me, nothing will happen. So that is a very special padhigam, that where he addresses a human person and not a Swami. So what I am trying to say is that so mangaiyarkkarasi is so special and so great that Thirunjana Sambandar was praising her. And in this padhigam, he describes her qualities. And one of the things he mentions in his padhigam, in 3.120, in one of the songs, he says that mangaiyarkkarasi is so great, and she was mixing holy ash with sandalwood paste and applying it on her chest. Because if she applies holy ash on her forehead standalone, that is verboten in their Jain thing, right? So the king will be considered, Jains consider it as a sin to see somebody with holy ash. So she had to adapt to ensure that her husband is not inconvenienced, but at the same time she doesn't want to forego wearing holy ash. So she applies holy ash on her chest, and then on top of the holy ash she applies chandanam, sandalwood paste. That way it is not visible. So that some other says in his padhigam that this is how great she is. So that's all we know about mangaiyarkkarasi. We don't know other details about her life, but this is her greatness from some other story we know. Any thoughts or comments before we go further? Okay, if not, we'll go to the next one. nEsanukkum adiyen. nEsan is the name of a devotee. We don't have many details about his life. He was a weaver, right? As a weaver, he was making cloth. And Periya Puranam says he lived in a place called Kambili, but Kambili is in somewhere in Karnataka. I don't know whether that was a real place or whether there was some other Kambili in Chola kingdom. I have no idea. And so this nEsan, he was a weaver, and as a weaver he was making garments and cloth and all the clothing, cloth. So he used to give clothes as gifts to Shiva devotees, whether it is the kO-cengat-chOzha or whether it is the waist cloth or whatever, angavastaram, whatever they want, he will give them clothing. So that was his service. Because of his profession was weaver, he was making garments, so he was giving clothing to Shiva devotees as his service. So that's all we know from his life. So he was such a great devotee that he was remembered by Sundarar and mentioned in this padhigam, but we don't have much details. As we have seen, some devotees we don't have much details about their life. And sacredAr says, I am telling you the stories as I know them to be true. He doesn't make up anything, right? If nEsan is a devotee here, and if he didn't have the details, he could have invented a plot. He could have made up a story and made it more interesting, and made some context and say what great service he did, what sacrifice he did. He could have made up something, but sacredAr doesn't do any of that. He describes what he knows, doesn't add masala. So that's all we know about nEsan. Then we have Tennavanaai Ulaganda Senganar Kadiyen. Senganan is one with a red eye. He is known as kO-cengat-chOzha in Tamil. And his story, he is associated with Thiruvānaikka. There is a great Shiva temple in near Tiruchirappalli next to Srirangam called Thiruvānaikka, and it is one of the Panchabhuta Stalams. There are 5 stalams known as Panchabhuta Stalams, with 5 elements, right? earth, water, fire, wind, sky, right? So Chidambaram is the Akasha Sthalam, and Kalahasti is considered the Vayu Sthalam, and Prithvi Sthalam, the earth, either it is, some people consider Kanchipuram as the Prithvi Sthalam, and most people consider Thiruvarur as the Prithvi Sthalam, and water is Thiruvannaikka, and fire is Thiruvannamalai. So in Thiruvannaikka, the story is that there was a long time ago, it was all a forest, and there was a Shivalingam beneath a jambu tree, Naval Maram in Tamil, jambu tree. And both the elephant, there was an elephant which had, because of Purva Janma Punyam, which was wanting to worship the Shiva. So that elephant will go bathe in the Kaveri river every day and fill its trunk with water and come to this Shivalingam beneath the jambu tree and do Abhishekam with its water in the trunk. And then, of course, maybe pick some flower and put it on the Swami and worship and go away. And there lived a spider. And that spider again had, due to Purva Janma Punyam, it wanted to worship the Shiva. So what it did was, it's a spider. So what can it do? So he says, okay, this Shivalingam is under this tree and a lot of dead leaves and other things will fall on the Shivalingam. Let me make a roof over the Shivalingam so that the dead leaves and other debris don't fall on the Shivalingam and make it dirty. So it builds a big web above the Shivalingam so that the Shivalingam is protected from all these debris that won't fall on it. So it will build this big web. And the first day, the elephant came back after this happened and then saw that there was a lot of cobwebs above the Shivalingam. And he says, it had the trunk full of water, right? So it hoses out the cobweb and does Abhishekam and does its puja, and then the elephant goes away. The spider is sitting further up and it sees the elephant destroying the web that it has built for Shiva. So again, that day, after the elephant goes away, the spider will get to business and it will spin a new web. And it will spin a new web to protect Shiva, provide a roof for Shivalingam, and then it will go and wait. That was that spider's service. The next day, the thing repeats. The elephant comes, washes away the web and all these things and does its puja and go, and then spider repeats the web building. So this goes on for number of days, repeatedly. Finally, the spider gets very upset. What is this elephant thinking? I'm spending this effort and trying to have roof for Shiva, and the elephant is destroying it all the time. The spider doesn't realize that the elephant is worshipping. Right? Spider thinks that the elephant is destroying his web. And of course, the elephant doesn't know that this spider is worshipping. It thinks that some web is there. So the next day, when the elephant comes and does all this, washes out the web and does Abhishekam to the Shivalingam and all that, right? The spider gets inside the trunk of the elephant and it climbs up all the way inside, and then it goes all very much inside the elephant's head and then bites in some sensitive spot. And the spider's bite and poison and all that, makes the pain and intolerable for the elephant. So elephant is waving his head, it can't get rid of it, it keeps biting, and finally it smashes his head, on some rock, and then by smashing the head on the rock and all that, the spider inside dies, but the elephant also dies. And Shiva gives Shivalokam to the elephant, and Shiva gives another birth to this spider, and that spider is this born as kO-cengat-chOzha. And so the Chora queen is pregnant, and she is getting closer to the time of delivery, And the Jyotishas, the astrologers and all those people who are looking at the various planetary positions and the timings and all, they say, hey, if only your child is born after another, let's say, half an hour or so, he will rule the world. He will be extremely great and all that. So the astrologers give that kind of information that if the child were to be born, let's say, half an hour or 40 minutes later, that will be great. So when the queen hears that this is what the astrologers are telling, she wants her child to be the great child, right? Probably she assumed that it's going to be a son. We don't know, but whatever it is, she wanted it to be a great child and rule the world. So she tells her assistants, hang me upside down so that the child doesn't come out for another half an hour or so. So they hang the queen, tie her legs up and hang her upside down so that the child is not born for some more time. And so half an hour passes by, and then they make a bring the queen back, and then she gives birth, and it is a boy. So they take out the child and give it to her. She holds the child baby in her hands, and she looks at him, and the child has got blood red eyes. I don't know whether it's probably because it was hanging upside down and all that, right? So the child has stuck there for some time, so maybe it had bloodshot eyes. So he says, oh, is my child the red-eyed child? So Sangan, Sam means red, Kan means eye. So Ko is king. Is my prince red-eyed? So that's why he's called kO-cengat-chOzha, the king with red eyes. And she exclaims that, oh, is my king red-eyed king? And shortly thereafter, the queen dies. We don't know what complications occurred in the childbirth and what happened. So she dies. But this baby grows up to be a great king, and he is known as kO-cengat-chOzha, the one with red eyes, the king with red eyes. And he was a great devotee. And he built many, many temples. The temple in ThirunIlakaNta is one such temple that he built. ThirunIlakaNta temple is huge. You have to go and see it to believe it. It's like, if you have been to temples like Tiruvannamalai and Chidambaram, it is of that kind of a temple. It's a huge temple. And he builds a temple. And then, not only that, he builds a lot of temples for Shiva in his kingdom. In the Chōla kingdom, he builds many, many temples. He builds temples that are known as Madakkovil. Madakkovil means elevated temple. So if you have, you may have been to some temples. If you like there is a temple near Thiruvarur called the Sikkal. There is a temple called Kudavasal. So these are all elevated temples. What happens is that when you go to the temple, most of the temple will be on the ground level. But the Swami Sannidhi, you have to climb up 15, 20, 30 steps to go up. So he creates a first floor, right, like a ground floor, and then he raises one level and makes it a higher level, and that's where Swami Sannidhi is. And this kind of a structure is called the Madakkovil or Perungoil. And he built so many temples that Sambandar in his padhigam, Tirunavukarasar in his padhigam, there are places where they have gone to some temples built by kO-cengat-chOzha, where in the padhigam they will mention this is a temple built by kO-cengat-chOzha. They mention his name and say, praise the temple. So, not only that, there's a, in the Divya Prabandham, the 12 Āழ்vārs have sung songs on Vishnu. In one of those songs, there is one of the 12 Āழ்vārs, mangaiyarkkarasi. He mentions this kO-cengat-chOzha's name and says, he built 70 temples for the 8th-armed Isa. He mentions that. And similarly, so we know that this kO-cengat-chOzha built about 70 plus big temples. And you can imagine, right? Building one temple itself is a major project. Now, whether it is Rajaraja Cholan, right? We remember the Tanjavur Brihadiswara temple. That is his one temple that would have taken him like 20 years or so to build, right? 15-20 years. So building one temple is a big project, and kO-cengat-chOzha was so great that he built big and small various temples, but he built about 70 temples, and that is his service. So that is the gist of kO-cengat-chOzha's life. Any comments, questions? So I know that we are a little over time. Do we have time for another 10 minutes? So then we can finish this padhigam.
Yeah, okay. But here this is very similar to Sri Kalahasti story, except that
there is no snake there in the story.
Kala is not there.
Mm-hmm.
Is it not?
So I'm trying to recollect what is the Sri Kalahasti story. I know that.
Sri Kalahasti. Sri means spider in Sanskrit. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Kala is a snake. And
Hasti
is
of course.
elephant.
Yeah.
It is elephant, right?
And these three, they keep the Kalahasti temple, that Shivalinga. The same story. The story goes the same way. The elephant comes and puts does abhishekam and puts a flower. Okay, and this spider keeps on building this thing, and the snake it actually cleans. I think something like that. And removes the flower. So they clash, and finally one day what happens is the complete story I don't recall very well, but the snake goes into the trunk of the hasti, that is the elephant, and then when it spits the venom and all that, it catches fire and all the three die at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And that is the place all of them get Shivalokam, and that is how the Sri Kalahasti name came.
That Kalahasti Sthala Puranam story, I don't remember coming across that in thevaram, this particular story. But again, I have to go and look it up. But I agree, it is a very similar story. As you said, there is no snake here, and the fight is between the spider and the elephant. And in the thevaram song, there is some other padhigam where it is described that the elephant got Shivalokam, but spider got a rebirth. And there is people try to explain why. And then they say, the spider, because it attacked the elephant. And the elephant did not attack the spider. Spider is the one that attacked the elephant. So the elephant was given Shivalokam. The spider, because of its action that it attacked the elephant, so it had to take another birth. So that's how it is. I know what you can call. People try to explain it. Why the spider got a birth. But this spider getting birth as kO-cengat-chOzha is there in the Sthala Puranam, and thirunIlakaNta mentions this in his song. thirunIlakaNta in one of the Ashtavirata Sthalams called the Tirukkurukkai, which is near Mayiladurai, which is where the Kama Dahanam is associated with that temple. That in that Kurukkai Viratam, he sings one padhigam. It is 3 dot. I'm trying to think of what is the number. It's 3.49, I think. Let me see. Okay, so it's I think it is not 3. Sorry, it's 4.49, I think. And in that he is describing the whole story. Silandi Maanai Kavil. That's how it starts. Silandi is the Tamil word for spider. So Thirunāvukarasar has mentioned this story that spider was reborn as kO-cengat-chOzha, and but he was a great king, right? There's a lot of debate as to what period he lived. Maybe he lived around 300, 400 of the common era, right? In that kind of thing, 200, 300 period. Because he is not mentioned in the Sangam literature, this king, kO-cengat-chOzha, but he's built temples, and he lived before Thirunāvukarasar and Sambandar. So that we know, because they have talked about him. They have been to the temples that were built by kO-cengat-chOzha. So kO-cengat-chOzha lived before Sambandar's time, and whether it was 200 years before Sambandar, 300 years before Sambandar, I don't know. We don't know. But he was a great king, and he built this, we know, because there are a number of temples that he had built, including Thiruvanika. Any other thoughts, comments on this? And you have time, right, for another 10-15 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. The next devotee mentioned here is thirunIlakaNta pananarku adiyen. So thirunIlakaNta pananaar is is one of the devotees who always went with Thiruñāna Sambandar. And Pananaar, as you can know, is the musician, and in those days, though they were considered one of the lower castes. Now, when they had this caste discrimination, there were people who were allowed inside the temple. There were people who were not allowed inside the temple. So Pananaar was considered to be of the lower caste who were not allowed inside the temple. So he hailed from a place called Irukattambuliur, which is near Vrudachalam. Today that place is called Rajendrapatnam. And he and his wife, Madanga Cholamani, they both were musicians, and they were great Shiva devotees. So his name was thirunIlakaNta, and Nilakanta, because there are two devotees as Nilakanta, right? In the first verse we have thirunIlakaNta koyavanār kadiyen. So there was a potter in Chidambaram who was thirunIlakaNta, and similarly there was this musician who was also had the same name, Nilakanta. So in order to distinguish who is who, we always say, the first one is simply called thirunIlakaNta or thirunIlakaNta koyavanār, and this second one is always known as thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANa. Yāzh means the musical instrument, like a veena. That's the Tamil name for a veena is yāzh, and Pana is the caste, means musician. So thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANa is a musician who used to play veena, and he was a great devotee. So he will go to different temples and stay outside the temple, in front of the temple, and then sing songs praising the Lord, etc. And one day, this story is there. Sekar describes the story. That he goes to Madurai and he sings from the outside, and then they ask him to bring him to the temple, and then he is brought into the temple, and he was sitting there on the floor and playing the veena. And then Swami says via Ashariri, hey, give him a proper asanam so that the veena doesn't get cold and affect the shruti. Right? So they offer him an asanam and do all that. So that's all described in Periya Puranam story. But more importantly, he is a contemporary of Sambandar. So he hears about this news that there is this great child saint in Sirigari who drank milk from Parvati, and he is singing wonderful hymns on Shiva. So he wanted to come and see the child saint and worship him and all this. So he and his wife, thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar and his wife Matanga Cholamani, they both come to Sirgazhi, and Sambandar welcomes them and treats them nicely, and they fall at his feet, and then thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar has one request. He says, Swami, you are singing such wonderful songs on Shiva. I want to be with you and be playing accompanying music as you sing these songs. So Sambandar agrees, and from that time onwards, thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar and his wife Matanga Cholamani, they both accompany Sambandar everywhere. So wherever he went, right? Whenever he goes on a pilgrimage, they will go with him. Otherwise, they will be in Sirgazhi, right? So they were with thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar, Thiruñāna Sambandar. And in fact, once in one of his tours, he goes to a place called Dharmapuram. Dharmapuram is a place near Karaikal. So, in Andhra there is a Dharmapuram, that's our Dharmavaram, right? So Dharmapuram is a place near Karaikal. So they go there, and that place is where thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar had a lot of his mother's side of family. Mother's parents, mother's brothers, sister, a lot of the mother's side was living there. So his uncles, right, maternal uncles were all there. So they all gather and welcome them, and then as they are talking, his uncles, they sort of say, Sambandar hymns are wonderful, and your Veena music accompaniment makes it even better. They thought that they were praising thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar and his music. But thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar felt that it is not correct. The way they expressed it implies that Sambandar's songs are great, but they are made greater by thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar's music. Meaning, as if without that music, Sambandar's songs were a little bit inferior. So he feels very bad that they said such a thing, and he requests Sambandar, Swami, please sing a song that will not be accompaniable by me in my Veena. So Sambandar sings one padhigam, Madar Madapidiyam. This is the final padhigam in first Tirumurai, 1.136, and it's called the Yār Muri. Means this cannot be. This is stronger than Yar. That kind of a meaning of the padhigam. So in that padhigam, as he is singing, he does gamakam and a lot of other things. And the stringed instrument is no match for the way Sambandar was delivering his song. So he could not accompany him in those kind of places. So at the end of the padhigam, thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar says, Swami, I feel so humbled, and given that my playing this Yar instrument was the one that caused my relatives to say those kind of words, I want to I'll break this Yar. I don't want to play this anymore. Then Sambandar says, don't worry, that is all Shiva's Leela. You play what you can play with your Yar, that's fine. Don't worry about these things. So then he was pacified, and thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar, as I said, went everywhere with Sambandar. And finally, when Thiruñāna Sambandar gets married, that story. We have covered Thiruñāna Sambandar's story. So on the day of his marriage, he goes to the temple in Tirunallur Perumanam, or what is known as Achalpuram today, and he prays to Shiva, Shiva, is this not time for me to come to you? And then Shiva agrees, and a great Jyoti appears there, and Sambandar tells everybody who was there to go around the Jyoti and enter that, and he also enters it finally. and they all go to Sivalokam. And then the Jyoti disappears. So all the people who were in the wedding, right, all his relatives, all his friends, whoever were there at the wedding, they all got Sivalokam that day. So thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANa and his wife, they were there in the wedding with him, and they also entered the Jyoti along with Thirunஞானசம்பந்தர். So that was the, he accompanied Thirunஞானசம்பந்தர் everywhere on this earth, and then he accompanied Thirunஞானசம்பந்தர் to Sivalokam too. So that is the greatness of thirunIlakaNta yAzhppANar. That is the gist of his story. Any comments, questions? We can talk. Otherwise, we will continue with the remaining 3 lines of this verse. Now, this is the list of all the devotees that gets completed here. Now, next 2 lines, Sundarar says, I am so and so, and I sang this padhigam, and those who listen to this padhigam will get this benefit. That is the next 2 lines. Yennavanam aranadiye adainditta sadayan isaignani kadalan thirunāvāllur kōn annavanam āruran adimai kettu uvappar ārūril ammanukku anbar. So in this he is saying, I am the son of Sadayan and Isaignani, and those who listen to this padhigam will become devotees of Thiruvarur Swami. So Yennavanam aranadiye adainditta sadayan. Sadayan is the name of Sundarar's father. Sadai is Jata. So basically, Jatadhari is the meaning of that name. So his father was named Sadayan, and he says, Yennavanam aranadiye adainditta sadayan. Aranadi means Hara's holy feet, Shiva's holy feet. So my father, Sadayan, who has reached Shiva's feet, means his father is no more at that point. He has already reached Shiva's feet. And isaignani. Isaignani is his mother. We don't know what her original name was. She was a great musician. That's what he's documenting. Isaignani means, Isai is music. Jnani means one who is mastered or one who is, who is well versed. So the great musician is how she was known. Maybe she was such a great musician, she was always called isaignani by others. So we don't have her original name. So Sadayan and Isaignani, their Kadalan. Kadalan means son. Kadal means love, and Kadalan means one who is loved, the lover. And here it means son, not romantic love. It is the loving child. So their son, and Thirunāvāllur kōn, and Prince of Thirunāvāllur. Thirunāvāllur is where he grew up, and Kōn means king. And you know that he was raised as a Prince of Thirunāvāllur. The local king was raising him as his adopted son. So he is I should say adopted son. What is it? The equivalent word I think is God's son or something. Like you raise him as a son, but you are not. He's not truly your adopted son. He's just somebody who you are very attached to. And Annavanam Āruran, that person, Āruran, through Āruran. Āruran is Sundarar's original name. His adimai kettu uvappar. This padhigam, in which he is describing his devotion, is servitude to all the other devotees, right? Those who listen to Sundarar's servitude, they Ārūril Ammanukku Anbar. They will become devotees of Swami of Thiruvarur. Ārūril Amman. Amman means Swami. Anbar means devotee. So the Swami of Thiruvarur, to that Swami they will become devotees. That means they all become true devotees of the Lord. With that we complete the tiruttoṇḍattogai 7.39 padhigam. All the devotees who are mentioned here, we have covered their life histories. One story we have not talked about yet, which is Sundarar's life story, which is what we will cover in the next session. Any questions before we close the session today? Any thoughts, comments?
No,
Okay, if not,
finally
yeah,
we are able to finish the long long thing, tiruttoṇḍattogai. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, we have finished the tiruttoṇḍattogai verses. We have finished tiruttoṇḍattogai verses, and we have covered all the stories except Sundarar's story.
Yeah.
With that only we will complete all the 63 nayanmar stories. So far we have covered the 62 nayanmars and 9 class of devotees. We still have the 63rd waiting. And so the sadaiya and isaignAni, we don't have much in their life stories, right? All he says is, if they were the parents who could have such a child, Aruran, imagine the greatness that they are. Now, how great devotees they must have been, what kind of punyam they must have done to have Sundarar be born as their son. So we don't have much details of their individual lives, of sadaiyaNar and isaignAni. Yeah.
Cool.
Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. With that, we will conclude today and start next time.
Shashi will come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Tiruchitrambalam.
everybody.